This video looks at using methods in classes in C#. Why should you have methods in classes? Well, remember one of the first methods that we talked about was a constructor. The constructor is actually going to create or construct your object in memory. If you have parameters in your constructor, then it will also set the different attributes or properties. Methods will allow you to modify or access those class variables for the object that you created. Remember that your instance variables are private, so you cannot change them in your code. You have to use a method in order to do so. So think of methods as a gatekeeper into the object. Now you're going to actually add your methods below the private instance variable declarations in your class, and then methods that are going to be used outside of the class. Remember, those are declared as public. If it's a helper method for the class only, such as a method that's going to do a calculation and you'll need to use it in several other methods, so you created a separate method for it, that one is declared as private. Otherwise, your methods are declared public. Methods are declared the same way as we previously talked about. So just as a reminder, every method is written in basically the same form. You have an access modifier, and again, if it's going to be accessible outside of the class itself, that's going to be public. Then you have a return type. If there is a data type or an object type that's going to be returned, then it goes here. If there is no return type, then that return type is void. Then you have the name of your method. Again, the name of your method should reflect the task that that method is performing. Then within parentheses, you have any parameters. The parameters are going to hold the values from what is being sent from when it's called into the method. So here's an example. We have a public class student, and then we have 4 private class variables. We have a default constructor that's going to set some just basic information. It could also have been just set to quote quote instead of actually setting it to a value. Then we have a parameterized constructor that has 4 parameters. The last parameter has a default parameter of just 5 zeros. So we could construct a student that had 4 arguments, or we could construct a student that had no arguments, or we could construct a student that had 3 arguments that would accept that default ID. Just below the parameterized constructor, you have a mutator method called setName. It's going to get in the first name from when it's called, and it's going to actually set the class fname variable. It's always going to be class variable equals local variable, where that local variable is the parameter that's up in your method header, because you're wanting to use that local value to actually set the class value. So the class value is always going to be on the left. Then the second method is an accessor method where it's simply going to return a name. So I have public string get fname, and again, it's going to access the fname from the object, and it's going to return it. Notice my fname, which is a string variable, matches my string return type. Now remember that your object is made up of properties and methods, and you're going to have to be able to use those mutator and accessor methods. So you're going to do that by saying object name dot method name and then any arguments. Remember that the arguments in your calls have to match the arguments or the parameters in the method list. So my example, mydog.setName Fluffy, would expect to find in the dog class a setName method that had a string parameter that would accept Fluffy. So in this example, I took this from the student class. So in my button click, I have declared local variables that are going to hold that information that I get from the text boxes. So it's going to get the input. Then I have a constructor. It's using just a basic constructor, the default, with no parameters. And then I'm using mutator methods to actually change the information for the A student object. So when I create this A student object, it's going to basically accept all of those defaults. So I'll have A student here, and it will accept those defaults. Remember, I had four F name, L name, ID, and grade. So it will accept whatever I had put into that initializer list where I set the variables for a student for the default constructor. So it will have those actually part of it. Now, when I say a student.setFname and then I send over the information that I got from the text box that's going to be kept in the fname memory spot, it will actually send over this entire object. So it sends over the object. This is also known as an implicit parameter, and the fname would be the explicit parameter. So it's an implicit parameter because I'm sending over the entire object. All the parts of the object go with it. Any previous attributes, properties, all of that goes with it. So it will go back to the method. The method had fname was equal to fn, if I remember correctly. So it's actually going to take whatever this was. So if I had put Jane here, it would take it and it would actually change this so that I had Jane. Likewise, a student.setName, again, it would send the object back. The object would go to the set L name, which would be very similar to the set F name here. So it would take that information and it would set the class attributes here. So I'm going to use all of this information to actually modify my a student variable. Now, to display it, I'm going to use the accessor because the accessor returns something. Remember, it normally is on the right side of an equal sign of an assignment statement. So it's actually going to go and get the fname. So when I say a students dot get fname, it's going to send a student over, and then the get fname method will actually look at the object and say, the fname for this object is Jane, and then it returns it. So what I will end up with here is actually Jane. It will do likewise for the other as well. So this is an example of using the mutator methods, and then the display is for the accessor methods. Now, remember, you can also have reference parameters. So again, this is just an example of a mutator. This is an accessor, and then this is a mutator. However, I have a reference parameter. So remember, what happens with a reference parameter is it actually sends over the address, and then the method looks into the address and gets the value, and it is actually going to reset the information that's loaded into that memory address. So down below where I say agame.setPrice, ref price, again, I have to have ref because they have to match up. It's actually going to send the price over, the price gets modified, and then when I have the label.text at the bottom, all I have to do is have the price because it's actually changed the actual value of it. Okay, and remember again that default parameters are optional. However, if you do, they go at the very far right. When the method uses them, it's determined whether or not when you have a call. So again, for the set info, I've got 1, 2, 3. However, this third one has a default parameter. So I could have set info with only a string and an integer, or I could have a set info with a string, an integer, and a string. And that's it for how to use methods in classes with C#.